That was a difficult weekend for Ferrari. Sainz out of the race on lap 1 and Leclerc in the barrier and recovering to only 6th position. So what exactly happened to both drivers and what does it mean in the title fight? First up, Sainz. He had his off in qualifying, ending up in the wall at Rivazza in qualifying 2. He tried to carry a bit too much speed into the corner, having turned in on the kerb, which was likely a little bit damp, and the rear of his car just didn't want to stick. This was another mistake by Sainz, which cannot have done his confidence much good. Now, I'm not 100% on whether this spin was due to the kerb being damp or Carlos not predicting the balance of the Ferrari properly, but either way, the result was the same. Sainz then went on to have a good drive in the sprint, getting back up to 4th position. However, his start for the Sunday race wasn't great, getting overtaken by Norris and then being in a position where he was wheel to wheel with Ricciardo. Ricciardo was ahead going down into turn 1, but Sainz had much more confidence on the brakes, which you can often do when you're on the outside. This is where a little lockup or a bit too much speed won't cause too much of an issue like it might do if you're on the inside of another driver. And Sainz did everything right here. He gave Ricciardo on the inside plenty of room. However, running around the outside like this is always a risk. Wet conditions, the busyness of the start, and cars that are heavy with fuel means judging the braking point and entry speed into the first turn is an extremely tricky estimation. And the balance between gaining time and not going off is what it's all about. And that's not to say that Sainz shouldn't go around the outside. He's racing with the best drivers in the world. He's counting on their estimations of grip and entry speed. However, the risk of being taken out is more than it would be if you were on the inside of the corner. And sometimes the starts just play out like that. And as a driver, you have to drive into the space. Meanwhile, on the inside of the corner, Ricciardo was coming into turn 2 on the limit, with the rear of the McLaren a little bit lively, and he was having to correct it all the way into the apex. He then touched the curb on the inside, which overloaded the rear tyres even more and made the car step sideways across into Sainz. And it was this bit of extra oversteer that caused the collision. If Ricciardo hadn't had got the oversteer, the two would have made it through the turns just fine, as Daniel's racing line was good. So really, this was Daniel's fault. It was him who misjudged the entry speed and slid wide into Sainz. Granted, it's extremely difficult to get this exactly right, especially when there are lots of cars moving around you, but in this case, Daniel made the misjudgment. Next up, Leclerc's big mistake. And what exactly happened? But first, would you like to win $1,000? Well, there are only 5 days left to join our new newsletter and potentially win $1,000, which we'll give to one lucky person who signs up. Also, it's going to be a great newsletter where we send you the best insights into Formula 1 each week. So join up now, link in the description below. So Charles could have settled for a good haul of points with a solid 3rd position, but the strong will inside him couldn't stop pushing and he wanted to get a P2. Although this may not have been the best option when looking at the championship across the entire season, personally, I like that Charles was really going for it. However, he went on to say, I believe this spin shouldn't have happened today, and that P3 was the best that I could do. We didn't have the pace for much more and I was too greedy and I paid the price for it. I lost 7 potential points compared to the 3rd place I was before. To be fair to Charles, this is really his first big mistake of the season. But he's right. If he's looking across the whole season, it's these mistakes that could be the difference between winning the championship and not. So what actually happened? Why, after doing so many laps over the weekend, couldn't Charles control his Ferrari across that curb? Well, first of all, the curbs at Variante Alta are not just like normal red and white curbs, which are quite flat. These have this huge yellow extra curb on the inside, as we do see at other chicanes. And of course, they're there to stop drivers simply driving straight across the chicane and gaining time. A driver can gain a lot of time in a tight chicane. It's often in the slower corners where you can win or lose more time than you can in the quick stuff. Because of course, you're in the corner for longer. And I'd guess that the teams were looking at how good their cars were over these curbs and would change the setup to help the cars through that section. In fact, the Ferrari did look pretty good over these curbs. Of course, nothing like we've seen in previous years where the suspension setups of the cars were much more sophisticated, but in comparison to the other teams in 2022, the Ferrari is good over the curbs. So what happened here? Well, think about what's happening with the car through this section. The front of the car is loaded up when driving into the chicane. But as the driver reaches the apex of the corner and the inside curb, the inside tyres are less loaded. The inside front tyre then hits the yellow curb with force. However, the suspension will absorb quite a lot of this force. Where Leclerc went wrong on this lap was that he was trying to cut the apex off a little bit too much, trying to get closer to Perez and get DRS activation. He cut the corner so much that he actually hit the yellow curb with the underside of the car, with the plank. The plank is simply part of the car. It's bolted onto the tub. So when it hits this curb, it's like hitting a ramp, and it launches the entire car into the air. At this point, he was carrying too much speed, and when the car landed back on the track again, it slid too much. And with all of that happening so fast, it's near impossible to collect the slide again. And with that, Charles was facing the wrong way and unfortunately in the barrier. Luckily for him, the damage wasn't too bad and he was able to recover to 6th position, only losing 7 points to where he should have been in 3rd. If you enjoyed this, check out these other videos which you'll enjoy. And don't forget to join the newsletter for your chance to win $1,000. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.